Two, one. I think we're live. Let me just verify that. Yeah, we are now live. All right, guys. Good evening. Today, what's today's date? Today is the 17th of March 2018. Today we are. This is the second week of our stream, Nicaitas Live. Today the topic is salvation, week 2. We did a brief, not so brief, it was like an hour, but like, yeah, brief intro of what salvation is biblically in the Bible and like what it's supposed to mean. We shared our different like interpretations and like our different views on what the Bible was meant, what the Bible was saying, what the Bible defines salvation as, and like just went through a few like biblical verses, like the word, to sort of get a deeper understanding. We also looked at Old Testament verses which referred to New Testament salvation, and basically tried to understand salvation in context of the Bible and of what God expected us to see it as, kind of. Yeah. All right, so Bami, you posted something last week which we couldn't go through, so could you just share with us what you sort of had in mind? It's on the Skype call, I think, on the Skype chat as well, so it's still there. You could read it out. I think it was a verse or something.
Yeah, so it's Philippians 3:4-11.
Yeah.
So it's basically, I could read it out, but it's really long.
All right, yeah, just you can summarize.
So I'm just going to summarize it. Basically, at the beginning of it, it says, if someone else thinks they have reason to put confidence in flesh, that I have more, which basically says everything you need to know about this verse. It's about, if people can find confidence in their abilities, in their presumed strengths, in their ideas, in their flesh, then how much more should you find and have confidence in the ability and the power and the strength and the love and the mercy of God? So it's basically just
yeah. It's interesting. It says if anyone thinks they can put confidence in their, like you said, in their achievements and stuff. This was Apostle Paul speaking, who was just giving a bit of context. He was one of the strongest Jews. There's a verse where he says he was the Pharisee of the Pharisees, and he actually persecuted the church for the longest time. He aided in the killing of many Christians, and actually, like, he was very convinced, because he was very much convinced that what he was doing was right. Like, he was 100% sure, until one wonderful day when he was on his way to persecute some more Christians. He had an encounter with Jesus Christ. Jesus literally appeared to him and asked him a question. He said, why are you persecuting my church? I think I'm paraphrasing a bit, but the point was, I think he said something about kicking against thorns or something. I'm not sure, but like, point was, he asked him why he was persecuting his church, and then a long series of events happened, which were the process of his sort of conviction and like coming to Christ. It was a pretty like extreme process. Like, I mean, for most of the apostles, I think his process of coming to Christ was the most extreme, actually. But yeah, but within a 3-day period, from going around being so convicted that he was right in like his actions and his righteousness, self-righteousness, and like actually going around persecuting the church and like killing Christians, the early Christians, within a 3-day period, he did a 100% 360-degree turn and started like preaching the exact opposite of that message, saying things like, saying that he was wrong, and like actually preaching deeply inspired things which he got from God, from the Holy Spirit, kind of thing. So yeah, so here he's basically saying that he came from a place where the Pharisees were seen as the most righteous people. So he came from a place where, like, yeah, they were the righteous of the righteous. They were the, like, if anyone knew the law of God and like knew about how like you should follow it to the T, it was them. And there's a verse where it says he now counts all of that as cow dung, which a lot of people would say is not righteous language, because like people like having this view that like, oh, like if you're a Christian you shouldn't say certain words, and like everything you say should be like, I mean it should be pure, but like just the way he was able to say cow dung, because if you think about it, cow dung, there's a swear word in modern day language that is literally the same thing. But this is Apostle Paul here saying that that he counts all of that, all of his actions, righteous actions, as cow dung, and that he sees it as trash basically. And like the point is, it's not about the actions. If you could go as far as calling it cow dung, it's just to show you that it's not really about the actions at all in any way, shape, or form, but that it's really about the grace of God and like what he does, what Jesus Christ did for us, what he's done, and like salvation on the cross and stuff, and grace basically. So yeah, so this is a very, very strong foundation for our conversation today. Thank you. I didn't realize that I'd never actually read it up until this point. I'm sorry about that. But but like yeah, it's a very, very strong foundation for the conversation for today. All right, so Tolu, do you want to give us like a brief summary on the study you guys did beforehand today as a group?
Yeah, okay. So I think we talked on why, I think we talked first of all on why Jesus had to come to earth, die for us in order to save us. Mm-hmm. Because after all, he's God. So God coming to die in a way isn't really a big deal. Because that isn't really a big deal. And then we talked about how it is a big deal because God in the form of Jesus had to take on human flesh, and he was fully human, 100% human, and also 100% God. Yeah. But like we did, Jesus had a big... The only difference is that he used his free will to do what the Father wanted him to do. And that's something a lot of us don't really do. God has given each and every one of us free will, but a lot of the time we use our free will to desires, like the desires of the flesh. But Jesus did the opposite.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. You've covered a lot. Faye, do you remember anything extra? Is there anything else you want to add in?
And then that was the nitty gritty of what we said.
Yeah. Does anybody else want to add anything? Is there anything anyone remembers that they wanted to just drop in? Bammy? No? Faye, no? Whitney?
No.
Nah. Alright. Okay. So yeah. That's basically from what I remember you telling me. That's basically that's the summary of what the discussion that went down. I think Faye was telling us about something she I'm reading through the notes actually, and you guys have like some really strong questions. So you went through basically one of Bami's friends, or like someone who told him that a perspective, a valid question, not valid perspective, but a valid question, that if he's God and he could do everything, that why is it such a big deal that he was able to die and like come back to life? And Whitney gave like a really good analogy. She was like, if someone's a billionaire and they give out like $1 million, then yeah, it's a lot of money, but like, come on, like why are we making a big deal about it, kind of thing? And so the point of the question was to sort of question why we're making a big deal out of it. And I think what we sort of discussed why we're making a big deal out of it, and why. Not that we're making a big deal out of it, but why it actually is a humongous deal. But before we go into that, I want to go through. I really like the questions. I want us to go through the questions on Skype, which you guys posted and went through. Sort of, yeah. Yep. Bammy, you want to go for it? You want to read the questions out?
Yeah, why not? Wait, let me open up the message thing. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So, why do we need salvation? Well, that's an easy one, because if not, we all die. And it's very painful, very eternal death. And we also don't know God. Which, I mean, it's the easiest question to answer. If you don't know God, then there's no point in anything. Right? You're just a pile of clay and dirt walking around in the world with no future, probably no past, no present, just there doing nothing, living for nothing. I mean, I don't see how you can live.
Hello? Hello? Oh. I lost connection for a bit. Hello? Bammy?
With that.
Hello? Yeah. Whitney, are you here? Are you here? Tolu? Tolu, you online?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm online.
Bay, you online?
Yeah.
Okay. I think my brother's internet sort of went down for a bit.
think
Yeah, his connection is not great. Whitney, are you here? Whitney Ernest? Yeah, she's probably not online at the moment. So I'm just waiting for my. Oh yeah, Bammy, you're back. Right. So the last thing we heard is something along the lines of like there's no point and like meaningless and stuff. So carry on.
Yeah, I don't get how you could live in a world where you're not, especially in this world, with all the things happening around where you don't have that relationship, or where you don't, where you're not living for anything. It's not worth living, is it? It's just like there's nothing. It's just emptiness, I guess.
But what would you say to someone who would say, but yeah, there is nothing, and like it would be delusional to like, just because you want to feel better and I feel like there is a purpose, like, doesn't mean like, what would you say to someone who's okay with there being nothing and like, who's okay with just they're okay with life and like living life to the fullest, and like basically like if they told you straight up like you're just like, it's a bit convenient because I've had conversations with people, like many people who tell me it's a bit convenient to say that, oh, like, yeah, after death, like, yeah, the person who created the universe like cares so much about us on this tiny little planet that like he would like pay so much attention to us. And like there's some people who think it's downright egotistical to think that. So what would you say to someone like that?
Oh, okay. So to the people who are okay with there being nothing, I don't think anyone's okay with there being nothing. You get them. They're okay when things are going right, but things always go wrong at the point, and then that's when people start thinking. They're okay with ignoring the fact that there might be nothing, but no one's okay with the fact that there is nothing. When it comes down to it and they think about it, it's going to bother them. And if you'd say it's egotistical to believe that the creator of the universe cares about us, well, that's why we have to remember that we don't deserve it, that we're not deserving of this care. Because we don't understand why he cares about us. We don't understand a lot of things. We don't know much about God. We only know what the Bible tells us and what we learned from our personal time with him. We can't. We know he loves us. That's why he cares about us. But why does he love us? Because he's love.
Yeah.
He probably loves everything else. We just don't know.
No,
Like,
but then the question is, okay, so why doesn't he also save the animals then? Like,
well, technically, he made. I like to. I don't know. I think human beings he made in his image, and everything else is the world around us.
no, and so
It's
that's
just
what
that.
they say. They think it's egotistical to say that. Oh, why? Like, so we think we're better than everything else. That we're so special that God made specifically us in His image and not everything else.
Yeah, but then you have to think of. Well, if some.
Hello.
It sounds a bit egotistic. Intelligent.
I have to say that again, that entire sentence, because my coder disconnected for a second, but like it's reconnected. So just repeat that sentence again. Hello.
Okay, so I can't answer. I can't answer the question
Yeah.
of is it egotistical to think to think uh to think are we special in some sort of way? Because really, are we special? We if if like if you think about it, if you think there's no God or whatever, then I don't know. Probably just another speck of dust in the universe. But we've heard and we know of this God who who loves us and who has shown his love, who came down to save us, who guides us through life, who shows us the truth, shows us the way, who keeps us, like who spends time with us. And you can ask yourself why. We don't know why. We'll probably never know why happened until like we go to heaven.
Yeah.
But we know that it is, and the more time you spend with him, the more you gain that confidence. Like what Paul was talking about, the more you gain that confidence in that love. So you still don't know why, but you don't need to as much anymore
Yeah.
because you know it is. You don't question. You don't question whether it's there or not. You just know because you can feel it. You can. It's like when you're friends with someone. Let's say you don't really know someone, but they're always there, and
Yeah.
both of you don't really know each other, but they're always there. You be like, like what's going on? But when you've been friends, when you spend time, when you friends, when you spent time, when you've actually built that connection, you don't have to ask why you here. I mean, that person probably just if you ask them why you here, they may not. I mean, God won't answer for why, but because like there's that, and you don't even need to ask why. You probably never will ask here. You just know he's there, and you're like, alright, so that's it. So you don't accidentally you find that you need to know why less, and you just enjoy his presence.
Yeah. So I agree. I really love the analogy you gave.
I guess.
You said like if you had a friend and then you would be asking them like why are you here, like, but eventually you would just accept that they were there because they wanted to be your friend, sort of thing. And then you would need to ask why less and just accept that he was. So you said earlier that we may not know why until we go to heaven. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not sure I completely agree. You were saying maybe, so yeah, in that sense, like you're just saying may, like some people may never know why, like yeah, but I believe the answer is there. It's in the Bible. Like it would be egotistic if I was the one who claimed it. But the problem is, or if human beings were the ones who claimed to like have an access or know how they would get to God, basically through their own means, but it's not, because we're not the ones bringing ourselves. I mean, I know a lot of human beings claim, there's a lot of religions to claim, yeah, we have found the way back to God, and we can like take people back to God through our own efforts. But I feel that's probably why we were sort of led to start this conversation on the fact that it has nothing to do with our efforts, because the whole point is it would have been egotistical and very convenient if we had been the ones to sort of bridge the gap between us and God, but we weren't. It's outlined very clearly in the Bible that we weren't. Like it had nothing to do with us. I mean, it seems slightly egotistical. It seems slightly egotistical, but it would have been if we came up with it. But the thing is, we agree it would be egotistical, but we didn't come up with it. Even if we tried, I mean, humanity's been trying for ages, and like, how far has that gotten us? But problem is, many of these people many of the apostles who they claim like who founded, not founded, but like who spread the gospel throughout the entire world, many of these people were people who agreed with their view that it is egotistical to think that. But they found out that whether egotistical or not, that was his choice, and that was what he did. They didn't want to believe it. A lot of them even resisted it, but the decision wasn't left to them, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I even one of the people I spoke with about this, I pointed him to one of the passages of David. I was like, your question is valid. One of the greatest prophets in the Old Testament literally asked the same question. He said, who is man, who are we that you care so much for us? Like literally, he actually because it's a logical question. If you look around at the universe and see its immensity and its beauty, you're gonna wonder, who the heck am I? Like,
Yeah.
but he sort of does. Why he does? It's in the Bible, because he had plans from the beginning of creation. Why he chose to do that? Because that was his blueprint. It's like, and it's a bit irrational to ask why, because like it makes no sense. It's like if someone designs like a cake for a wedding, and you say, oh, why did you make a cake when like you're discriminating against all the other types of food? We could have had a banana for the wedding, like a banana like pile for the wedding, and then you could like cut the banana. Like honestly, like it's literally the same thing. We could have had like a stack of bananas for like the wedding. And, like,
Definitely not the same thing.
I'm telling you, like legit, like asking why, like it's literally the same thing. It's like, it's the same. Like, why did you choose a cake? Because I wanted to choose a cake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the answer to every why question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, it's a wanted to. You can't really answer a why question unless you're the subject of the why.
Yeah.
It's always
Precisely.
you wanted to. That's why anything is done.
Yeah. Precisely. Exactly. So yeah, that's just the answer to that, which is quite interesting. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Right. Yeah, so the next question was, so that's why we need that. That's pretty like solid views from everyone. I feel like we need more input, guys. Like, it's just been Bammy and like, where's everyone? Everyone was so bubbly like a few minutes ago. What's up? Tolu, Whitney, Faye, you guys online?
Yeah, you guys really much
Pardon?
answered the question. You guys pretty much answered the question. That verse that you said, like, who is man that you're mindful of him, was what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Calm.
Yeah.
That's good. I like it when like there's people who like, because it shows that like we're sort of like moving together, when because there's times when I have ideas and then someone else says the same exact thing, I'm like, snap, yeah, that's good. It's just like a sign that like we are one kind of thing. But yeah, I'm a bit dramatic with like my view on life and like getting excited about things that probably most people overlook. But yeah, that is me. But yeah, let's carry on. Let's go for the next question. This is a good question. who asked this? Who asked this? Why did God save us the way He did?
That was me.
That's heavy.
So
All right, go for it.
yeah. Oh, I asked the question. I did. I'm joking. Why did God save us? Did That's a big one. Because one of my flatmates was asking me. We were talking, and then we were talking about because she's Muslim and I'm Christian. And we're talking about salvation in each
Yeah.
of our religions. And I talked about how we believe that we need painful death in order to save us. And she was just like, well, if God is all powerful, why can't God just say you're forgiven? Or why can't He just, maybe click His fingers? Why did He have to save us the way you say He saved us? And yeah, that how do I answer this? I think for the one thing, when I think about it, the Bible verse that comes to mind is the part where it says, without the shedding of blood, there is no remission for sin.
I feel like you're onto something, but I feel like a lot of people give that answer but never really understand what it means. So what does it mean?
What does what mean?
The passage you just quoted, literally. The one just quoted.
Okay, so without the shedding of blood, there is no remission. Okay, I think it means without. Okay. Let me think about it this way. Because sin is. Because let me just use the Bible verse to answer Bible verse. I'm going to see what I can do. Okay.
All right.
So the Bible said the wages of sin is death.
Haha, you're onto it. Nice.
In
Carry
the
on.
way, if the fact that we sin means that we die, then that means that in order to sort of get rid of that sin, we need to die and we need to shed blood. So, So the whole salvation plan was God stepping in our place and shedding His blood so that we would not have to shed ours.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's how I see it. Without sin, without shedding our, And then if you go back to the Old Testament, I believe God was putting like a, what do you call it? Before you have the real building, you have the is it like a
prototype?
Like
Prototype, yeah. Prototype. Yeah.
So He would ask the Israelites to sacrifice. The amount of animals they would have to sacrifice is mad. I don't know how they did it, but literally for every little thing, go bring a lamb, bring a pigeon, bring a goat, bring a bull, name it. So I think God was just trying to get us to understand the sort of gravity of sin.
Yeah.
Because if I believe that if God can just click His fingers and say, "Oh, we're forgiven," I don't think we'll fully deep how bad it is, how bad our situation is. That makes sense. So, yeah. I think that's my take on it.
Yeah.
My take.
One interesting take I had on it as well is this. It's sort of like, so as you said, the wages of sin, according to the Bible, the wages of sin is like death and stuff, and like, but the Bible makes it clear that even, at least from the biblical stance, even before, sin is not, people think it's about the actions, which is why Paul makes it very clear that salvation is not about the actions. It leads to the actions, but it's not about the actions. So there was a state of perfection of things when God created it, in like according to like the Eden story, when God created everything, like he said it said He created it and He saw that it was good and everything. But then sin crept in, and then things stopped being perfect. I'm trying to be as like, because I've done extensive study on this and like there's some deep stuff related to it, but like I'm trying to be as like not too like deep as I can, so like it makes sense because if I go off on a tangent, then it won't make sense anymore. But point is, in summary, things changed, and not just what. It wasn't just about actions. It wasn't just because like they disobeyed, so that action. But nah, it was like there was a state of perfection, and once they sinned, things changed, and that nature of perfection sort of was lost. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just lost in like the world and stuff. It was actually lost in human nature, which is why human beings were incapable of taking themselves back to that nature of perfection. Because like according to the Bible, once Adam sinned, it actually compares Jesus to Adam. It calls Jesus the last Adam, and calls like Adam in Eden the first Adam. It says the first Adam brought sin to all of humanity. So, and it says the sin was in his seed. So like the very nature of humanity became sinful. And it that's not to say that we can't do any good, just that we can't be perfect without him. So no matter how much good you do, there will always be imperfection, if that makes any sense. And not just in your actions, but the actions are a portrayal of the nature. So it wasn't really about the actions, it was more about the nature. And so because that nature was imperfect, no matter how much good you do, there will always be imperfect actions. Because like it's like a cat. If it became a nature thing, it's like a cat is genetically a cat. A cat can never give birth to a dog. In the same way, we're imperfect. We can never give birth to perfection. We can give birth to great things, good things, but not perfect things. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it needed someone who was perfect to sort of come back to that. And like, so that nature of perfection is God himself, if that makes sense. If you read through like Genesis and all those things, like it says he created things according to his will and his plan. And then when it came to humanity, he sort of breathed into us like his breath. Like, pardon?
No, keep going. Sorry.
So it breathed into us and stuff, and like that was when we became alive. And like, so that nature of perfection is the presence, not just the presence of God, but like the active, like complete presence of God. Because there's the presence of God in the sense that like, yeah, he sees through everything, he's there, he's aware, but then there's his full presence, like his full glory. And the Bible says that full glory, it compares it to light. It says light shines in darkness, and darkness cannot comprehend it. So the best analogy would be like being in a dark room and turning on a switch. Like the darkness sort of vanishes and then it's just light. In the same way, if God came in his full presence, like darkness would literally just vanish. But the problem is, we became imperfect, so our nature became imperfect as well. So if he hadn't like sort of sent Jesus Christ, but assuming he's seeing his child suffering and he really wants to hug the child, like full embrace, but he can't, because as soon as he touches the child disintegrate or just die, basically. Does that make sense? Hello?
You kind of went offline a bit for the last few.
What was the last thing you heard me say?
Wait, is that child?
Hello?
Like something child.
Oh yeah, so this is the analogy. I was like that.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
If anyone's heard of
I hear you.
the story of like the hand of Midas kind of thing, so it's something similar. So like what I saw, like the sort of interpretation I got is, it came to a point where like he could no longer exist in his full glory on earth anymore, or like with us, because we had sinned. So we sort of, and God is perfect, right? So like if there's imperfection, by the of God, it can no longer be like attached to him, because not only is he perfect, but he's light that shines in darkness. When he shines in darkness, the darkness disappears. And like, because we became by nature imperfect, if he had stayed that close to us, kind of thing. And this is deep. It's explained in Hebrews and Revelations and like Old Testament as well. But the point is, if he had stayed in his full, like, complete glory, like, the analogy I got was, imagine a father seeing his child like suffering, and like he wants to give his child like a full hug, full embrace, but he can't, because if he does, then the child would like catch a disease and die, or like just disintegrate, or like just vanish basically. If you've heard the story of the hand of my is it Midas? Yeah, the hand of Midas, that would make a lot more sense, because like the hand of Midas basically. Oh my days, are you kidding me? Hello?
No.
Did I go offline?
Yeah.
What was the last thing you heard? Sorry, my internet today is behaving quite strange. Hello? What was the last thing you heard? Hello? Okay. Patience.
Hello.
Can you hear
Hello.
me, Bami?
Yeah, I can hear you.
What was
Yeah,
the
I can
last
hear
thing
you.
you heard? Hello?
Hello.
Hello? Yeah, me?
Hello.
Can everyone now hear me?
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
What was the last thing you guys all heard, so I can continue from there?
You were talking about the story. You said that's the story of the hand of Midas, and then
So I was saying it's
What do you
similar.
know?
If you've heard of the hand of Midas, the story of the hand of Midas is basically a guy who wished for everything. In this case, it's not a guy who wishes, but like basically a guy who everything he touched turned to gold. And like, gold is a good thing, right? But however, he wanted to hug his daughter, and he hugged his daughter, and she turned to gold. So that wasn't a great thing. So like that was the kind of like interpretation I sort of got. Like, he's full of glory, but because we sort of became imperfect, he could no longer be that close to us, because if he did, then we would have basically disintegrated. Does that make sense? Hello?
Yeah, makes sense.
it does. It does make sense.
Yeah, and that's why he looked so terrifying in the Old Testament. Like, I actually read a verse that where that was what made me deep it. In the Old Testament, it says fear the Lord, but in the New Testament, when Jesus talks about it, he says love the Lord your God. It says worship. So I came to the realization that the fear of the Lord is actually is the Old Testament. It's a direct translation of love the Lord your God is the direct translation of Old Testament fear the Lord your God. Like, they're literally synonymous. They mean the same thing. Just in the context of the new covenant we have now, it's love. But in the context of the old covenant, it was fear. It's explained in Hebrews. Like, they talk about, like, the writer of Hebrews talks about it. In Old Testament, Moses said something. He was like, when the Israelites saw God like on the mountain and everything, and like in his glory, like physically they saw his physical glory, like there was fire around the mountain and everything, they were petrified, and like they heard the trumpets and stuff, like trumpets of an angel and like stuff, like they were terrified, and they were so scared that they were begging Moses not to let God speak to them, that instead Moses should go and talk to God himself, and that he should come and relay the message to them, because they were like, it was too scary to actually like just hear God straight up. He said something quite profound. He was like, do not be afraid that God is appearing to you this way, so that the fear of him will keep you from sinning. So in the same sentence, he said, "Do not be afraid," and then he said he's doing this so that the fear of you will keep you from sinning. And when I saw that, I was like, "Whoa." That means the fear of him is not like the fear of the Lord is not the same thing as being afraid of God. Because he literally said, "Don't be afraid of God," but God is doing this so that the fear of Lord. Because if they meant the same thing, then that would be a self-contradicting statement, right? Hello?
Yeah. I would.
But he said but they don't mean the same thing, and that's why he said the fear of the Lord will keep you from sinning. And like there's another Old Testament verse that said the fear of the Lord is to hate evil. At no point does the Bible equate the fear of the Lord to meaning that you should literally be afraid of God, if that makes sense. Hello?
Yeah, it makes sense.
And so when I deep this, like Moses' statement,
Hello?
he said, "Do not be afraid, for the fear of the Lord, he's doing this to keep you from sinning." So he's basically saying the fear of the Lord will keep you from being afraid of God. Now, what in the New Testament keeps fear out? There's only one thing it says. It says perfect love casts out fear, because fear has to do with punishment, and like punishment is has to do with guilt and being guilty of sin and being guilty of being judged by God, kind of thing. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So that was when I realized that they were literally the
Yeah.
same thing. That was when I realized that they were one and the same thing. Old Testament Moses saying the fear of the Lord will keep you from being afraid of God and will keep you from loving God and doing the right thing. New Testament says the love of God will keep you from being afraid of God and being afraid of judgment and would keep you to do the right thing. It clocked in my head that, man, when Jesus said, because when Jesus said love the Lord your God, I was like, wait a minute, there's no such Old Testament like commandment. And then I clocked that it was fear the Lord your God. Like they're one and the same thing. Hello?
Yeah, so it does make sense actually when you look at the contrast between the old.
Yeah.
It does make sense when you look at the contrast between the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Mm-hmm.
Because Old Testament, it switches to all about love and all about like it's when the relationship with God comes into play because Jesus has died on the cross. In the Old Testament, we had an eye for an eye. We had follow the Lord.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of these brutal certainly because they were all deserving of death and they hadn't been saved. They were literally just following what God said, awaiting the Messiah, but they were
Hello?
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 Okay. Last thing I heard was awaiting the Messiah.
Yeah, they were awaiting the Messiah, and it was sort of like God was ruling over them with an iron fist. But
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
On the cross, and then we start to see this relationship between people and God. And there was like the men of God. You always saw that relationship there. Those people knew God, but then they would pass off the commandments to other people. So there was that middle, which is somewhat still like an iron fist because not everybody could just walk up to God because really they weren't worthy, and Jesus hadn't died, so they had no right to be there.
Yeah.
And then Jesus dies, and then you see that move from a governing body in which they're kept in line by fear to a relationship with each person to which it's not. I'm gonna call. Okay. Which it's love, with like one rule spanning it over everyone,
Mm-hmm.
each person. So it's literally, it's not the nation of Jews or Jerusalem or the Hebrews or whatever. It's me and God for each and every person.
Yeah, pretty
And
much.
that's where you realize, yeah, that's where you realize that we're not talking about fear anymore, because now we know God. We fear what we don't know. Now we know God, and we have that relationship with Him.
Deep.
So it makes sense. It makes sense how we move from fear to love in that way.
Yeah.
From Old Testament to New Testament, it does make sense.
Yeah. 100%. There's something you said which I wanted to say something about, but I forgot it now. Oh, let me see if I can remember. Oh, what was it? If anyone has anything to add, just feel free to jump in whilst I try and remember what it was I wanted to say.
I say something in the meantime.
Yeah, go ahead.
With respect to the Old Testament stuff that we said, could you then not blame the people for worshipping other gods and coining other religions and stuff like that? Because they probably thought that with or without Christianity is, or the belief in the God that they served was not really going to end up with anything good. That's if I'm understanding it right. Because according to what I'm understanding, then there was no way they could go to heaven, right?
There was no
way they could be saved.
They didn't even know about heaven or hell. Like, that wasn't. It was a select few people who knew about heaven and hell. Like, it wasn't a thing. Like, Solomon actually made a statement. He was like, "Who can prove that the spirit of like animals goes down and the spirit of like people goes up?" Like, heaven and hell was not a concept back then. In like mythology and like religions and stuff, like, yeah, it was. But in terms of Jewish faith and religion, like, they had no idea about that sort of stuff. Yeah, I mean, they had a vague idea, but that was basically what it is. What it was. It was a vague idea.
So why then do they worship a god?
Pardon?
Well, the thing about the Israelites, sorry, can I just jump in?
Yeah, jump in.
I love the Israelites so much because they're just very interesting people. The thing about Israelites is that they had seen God's love so evident and so like
yeah.
Apart from Israel coming to die, that was a different kind of love. Like the fact that someone would be with you in a cloud of fire and like it's just, you can obviously see God's love.
Yeah.
The fact that like things were happening, they like the prophets and the priests saw God's love. They saw like clouds when they went to worship and all of that. But like the Israelites, they were so focused on those moments. So, like, everything was going good. The battles, they got all the spoils, everything was going fine. Then they'd like look around them, and because also they were disobedient. So when God said, "Drive away everyone that's not supposed to be here," why would you be leaving people that like are not inhabitants of like your land?
Yeah.
And then they would be worshipping their gods. Yeah. And when everything's going fine for you, you look like, "Oh, who's that? Like, what are they doing? That looks very interesting." And then they going into all of that, worshipping other gods, forgetting God. And then when a problem arose, they wouldn't run to the gods of the other people. They'd run back to God because they knew they're more powerful. So it was the thing of like, they were just too focused on those big moments where God will come and show himself. Yeah. And they got that like God had his own, like God was also a jealous God. So they knew God as like God, their savior, but like they also kind of knew God as a jealous God, but still, I don't think the jealous part resonated with them. Like, just not. They didn't understand. They just.
I like the way you phrased that. I don't think the jealous part resonated with them. I'm a visual thinker, so like when you say that, like, it's pretty funny. But yeah, I completely agree. They were more interested in the works than in a relationship, which he was. Yeah. He wasn't. He was about relationship, but the thing is, all the other gods were not about relationship because, like, if we go into the history and like the biblical meaning of what other gods are, like it's clear they're not about relationship. They're about control. They want to control. They want to dominate. There's nothing like free will with those guys. You get me? So like, pardon? No.
Oh, I wasn't saying anything. I was like,
okay.
I was agreeing.
Yeah. Okay, I thought because I heard sure whether it glitched and I couldn't hear you anymore. All right, so like, those guys, those things are not about relationship. They're about like control, like dominance, like has it reconnected? Reconnected. All right. So I was saying, the other religions are about like trying to. Can everyone hear me? Hello. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay, we're back. My internet is just behaving quite strange today. I'm not. I have no idea. But yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So whereas the other religions were about like doing stuff to attain certain levels of like holiness or like spiritual. Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Now, yes.
Yeah, I think you went off.
Yeah, I did go off for a bit because my internet is acting quite strange. But yeah. Can you hear me now? Hello. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was like, whereas other religions were about like sort of doing things, actions to like reach higher levels of spirituality or like holiness or like self-righteousness, Christianity was like, yeah, at least biblical, according to the Bible, was like God knew like there was no way we could get back to that point because like it was just not in our nature. So he literally came down and he humbly died a very brutal death. And not just that, like we've talked about throughout our conversation today, he went through a lot and like suffered a lot. So because he knew we couldn't do it, so he was like, he's gonna do it for us. And so he came down and actually did it for us, and then like bridged the gap himself, which, unlike the other religions, isn't really. The other religions are more like, oh, do this for me and I'll do this for you. It's more like a bargain. It's like, oh, it's like if you do this you get this, or like it's a trade. Whereas Christianity was never been about trade, which is what a lot of people don't understand about love. Love has never been about trade. Like you don't do stuff for someone because you want something in return. If that's what you're doing, then that's not love. That is a transaction. Love means you do something, which is, I was quite shocked when I heard this from the mouth of Justin Bieber, because like I was like, oh cool, I didn't even know he was like into stuff like that. But yeah, love is about doing stuff for people because you want to do stuff for them. Pardon?
Yeah, Justin Bieber bits. I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah. So he was like, love is about doing stuff for people because you want to do stuff for them, and that's the line between religion and what Christ actually claimed Christianity was supposed to be. Religion says, oh, do this, and like you will be saved. Christ said, if you accept me, you are saved. You don't have to do anything. But after being saved, I will walk with you, and my relationship will change your life. Basically, like it will take you to a whole new level. And in being in that whole new level, you'll naturally change. But you changing is not what saved you. I saved you. The changing was a result of this salvation. The changing was not the cause of the salvation, if that makes sense.
I have a question though.
Yeah.
Because this came up on Twitter.
Pardon?
Okay, so somebody on Twitter like used a line, and I couldn't really say much. So yours salvation. Okay, so you're saved now.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then would you say that the guidelines on the behavioral guidelines of the Bible are like not mandatory?
Yes
If you
and
go
no.
against them, because if
Yes,
you go against them, then you risk your salvation.
not completely.
Right?
So yes and no. So I'll give you the reason why. A lot of people think they pay a lot of attention to the Old Testament, and again, like I said, that is not. It's something that happened because there were things that caused it to happen, and like that was not the initial plan. Like when there was the initial church had a very clear understanding of what Jesus came to do, and they understood his words and like understood what he was talking about. But that side sort of drifted away when like people sort of tried to start mixing like what he was saying to sort of pursue their own goals. And the moment you try and use Jesus's words to suit your own goals and divert it to like achieve your means per se, then it's no longer his word, because the whole point is it shouldn't be inconsistent. But once you do that, you twist the foundational purpose, the foundational like ethos, the foundational point behind the message, and you're using it for the wrong thing. And there's no way you can successfully do that, because it's like the truth. Once you if the truth was directed for one thing, if you try and use it for something else, you have to compromise on something. And once you compromise on something, then it becomes a lie. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what happened. But so going back to your question, the Old Testament, the Bible is even in the New Testament that we no longer, Paul talked about it. He said we no longer live under the law of the Old Testament, because the Old Testament was a bunch of rules. Jesus spoke about it, but not many people understand, because he didn't really expatiate. He made statements here and there, but like the understanding of it comes when you study it deeply and you study the stuff the apostles actually said in their own books afterwards. Jesus said something. His disciples were disobeying the commandments, and he disobeyed the commandments. He ate and drank, and when he actually made a comment about it, he was like, John the Baptist came fasting and praying, and they called him a madman for not drinking and like not like being with people and socializing. And then he himself, he said, as meaning Jesus Christ, he came eating and drinking, and they called him a drunkard. And like so he was trying to show that they like Faye said, they were so focused on the actions, on the things, as opposed to the actual relationship. Now, if you go back into Old Testament, there were many instances where God would set a law, like a general law, but then specific instances, like there was he set up a system where Moses had to sort of like judge between the people, because obviously like if you have a family, you're gonna have disputes, and if you have disputes, you're gonna have to like sort of judge between it. So he set up a general law which formed as like which served as like a blueprint of like, in general cases, this is what should happen. But then there were specific cases when there were disagreements or like misunderstandings, or like it wasn't clear what to do. And in many of those instances, when they did come to Moses and ask him like, the law says this, but we think so. There was one where the law said a woman shouldn't inherit her husband's things because like she's a woman, something along those lines. It was for another reason or something, I can't remember. But point is, she wasn't supposed to inherit or so. But then this specific woman was she was a widow. I think her children had died, and like she was in a very bad place basically. And then she came to Moses and she was like, the law says this, but like if I don't have any money, that I'm going to like die and stuff. And in that specific scenario, the law was overruled. Like Moses prayed, and the answer he got was that despite the fact that the law says this, she should get it. Because why? Because there's a general law, but the entire point, Jesus spoke about it. They said, which is the most important law? He said there are two laws that are most important: love the Lord your God with all your heart, and love your neighbor as yourself. Upon these two laws hang all the laws of the prophets. He didn't even say of the prophets. He said hang all the laws and the prophets, meaning everything the prophets ever said All of them, every last one of them.
One of them.
And everything the law of Moses ever said was to support these two things, to aid in showing people how to love, like the actions of loving. But the problem is, because our nature was in a specific way, you can only show people actions, but you can't really change nature. Nature could only be changed after Jesus Christ came, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So like it was to show people that the most important thing that has always been on God's mind is love, but it was misused. And Jesus actually said, he was talking to one of the disciples, he said, in doing this you nullify God's word by using his word to further your own like selfish agendas. And that's the thing that has plagued humanity from, like, all time, is we always end up confused whenever we try to use God's word to further our own like selfish agendas, if that makes any sense, instead of actually seeking out what he actually meant. Hello?
Didn't really get that.
Oh, you didn't get that? So the point is, we don't live under the Old Testament anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The whole point. So I gave that example to sort of describe how, even in the Old Testament, there were specific scenarios where the law, God Himself said that law doesn't apply in that specific scenario because it contradicts the point of love. So the law was given as a guideline. It wasn't given as something to worship. It wasn't given as something to like say like. We weren't supposed to serve the law. The law was supposed to assist us in serving God. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But then it was flipped. People ended up making, like Faye said, they focused on the actions and they ended up making the law the God, instead of using the law for what it was meant for, to be a avenue to like guiding you to God. It's guiding you to a relationship with God. And Jesus came to undo that. He made a statement once. He said, when his disciples were disobeying the law, in quotes, they were eating on the Sabbath day, the Pharisees came trying to be all self-righteous and like say something about them. And then they were like, why are they disobeying the law of Moses and like eating on like the Sabbath? And then he responded, was the Sabbath made for man, or sorry, was man made for the Sabbath, or was the Sabbath made for man? Meaning that law for the Sabbath day wasn't even made for man to sort of serve as a god, but instead was made to help man, was made to make us whole, kind of like assist us in like, because like if God hadn't put a Sabbath there, then we would have ended up doing what we're doing now, like working 24/7 and like not resting and not living great lives. The whole point of all the law was to aid people in like living for full life and the way it was supposed to be enjoyed. And that's the only reason the Sabbath exists, was to sort of enforce it within the Israelites. Like the point is not to work. Work is not supposed to be something you're supposed to be a slave to. It's supposed to be something you're supposed to enjoy. So I know if I leave you to your own devices, you will become a slave to work and make your lives miserable. So I'm going to put a day here for rest, which is enforced. It's kind of what a parent does when they say, all right, you know what, you've read enough, or like you've played enough, now it's time for siesta, kind of thing. It was an enforced siesta. Sabbath was basically a nationwide enforced siesta.
Mm-hmm. Heads up.
Yeah. Yeah, so in that sense, we don't live under the law of Moses or the law of the Old Testament, but we do live under a new law. And it's not a law per se, because it's not something that is enforced. But Paul was just explaining in terms of explanation. He was just saying that there's a new law, which is the law of love. And it's not a law in the sense that, oh yeah, like it's enforced, but it's a law in the sense that, like, if you claim to follow Christ, who is the living embodiment of love, so if you claim to follow love, then you should be trying to love. If you're not trying to love and you claim to follow love, then you're lying.
Um.
Hello?
Um,
Hello?
yeah.
Sorry, I missed what you said. What'd you say?
Oh, I was trying to add something.
Yeah, add it. Go ahead.
Go. I was just everything you said was just like reminding me of like Romans book is about like, and then I know it says there's now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we're no longer bound to the law. Like those who live, we should not live by like the flesh. We should live by the spirit. And like when you're talking about love, I just got reminded like love is not just love towards your like fellow men, like towards people. Also love to God as well, because like if you say, oh, now I've been saved, like yes, you've been justified not by your own works, but the next step after justification is your own works, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like
it's transformation.
Sanctification takes work. Like sanctification comes from knowing who God is, like loving God, because when you love God, there's certain things that you won't do. You won't live in your old ways. Now you know, like that now you know the price that was paid for you. You want to do every single thing God wants to do. You want to live according to God, like that kind of love that makes you say like, oh God, I'm not going to do this if you don't want me to do this. I'm not going to go here if you don't want me to go here. Like says, I think Paul said it. I don't know. I'm not too sure. I'm going to paraphrase because I actually don't. I have no idea where it is. It says, all things are something about how not all things are permissible.
Yeah. All things are lawful, but not all things are expedient. So like all things are permissible, but not all things are necessary, basically.
Yes, that like, that like, if it's not edifying you or helping you get closer to God or showing your love for God, then why are you really doing it? Like, really, I feel like loads of people use that statement like, oh, does that mean the law doesn't apply, just so they can go back to their own ways and they can be like, yes, the law doesn't apply, but then like that your life is now not for you. Like you're no longer living for yourself anymore. Like 100%. Now you're living for God. Now you have something to sort of like guide you, like a sat nav.
Yeah. Oh, my day is sat nav. That's a really cool analogy.
TD Jakes used it.
TD Jakes is a boss. Like he's such a he's a legend. We referenced him so much in our last like study. We were doing like was it purpose and like vision, and like literally like almost every second thing we said was a reference to TD Jakes. It was funny. It's funny because like when I actually went back to watch the video, like one of the videos that came up that was suggested was a TD Jakes video. So it's possible YouTube went through the video and like saw TD Jakes so many times, and then they just like put a natural like progression.
So funny.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. But yeah, that's basically it. I agree 100%. I feel like in answering that one question, we've answered like the next one as well. Why did Jesus have to come and die? Yeah, we sort of answered that as well. Could God just not have said we are forgiven? Oh yeah, we've basically answered everything. So yeah, the only reason Jesus sort of had to die was because like God is just, like, and I feel that's a part of love which we tend to, as a people, sort of overlook a lot. Like being completely just and righteous, it took a lot to sort of like do what he did, because he played the enemy basically, because like the plan was if they sin they die, but he pulled all the stops. He had said a word and he can't go against it. If like the Bible says he's not man that he should lie, so like it's like if if he it's impossible for him to lie, one, but if he lies, then by very definition, or if he says something and then contradicts it, then by very definition, he's not God anymore, and then we don't have to serve him. He's not perfect anymore, if that makes sense. Hello?
No, can you re-explain it, please?
So basically, he said in Genesis, like you said, you were the one who quoted it, the soul that sins shall die kind of thing. And what is death? Death is it's merely the separation from God, because he is life, and so the absence of life is death, right? And so when he said the soul that sins shall die, that was a statement that was like locked in. And because he is life and he is perfect and he is like perfection, he cannot say something and then later say something else that contradicts the first statement. He can say something and build on that statement, but if he has said something and he in his nature is defined to be truth, and what he says is defined to be truth, then he cannot later say something that's inconsistent with that first statement, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And because he had said that, the soul that sins shall die, that's the meaning of that verse you quoted earlier, saying remission of sin required the shedding of blood, because like it was set in stone, like if there's sin there must be death, and death is merely separation from God, from being perfect. And it's not like he said, oh, if there's sin there must be death, so like because he said he had to kill people, it was just like he's perfect. If there's like, by definition he's perfect, so if there is imperfection, it can no longer be part of him, because then he would no longer be perfect and it would be self-contradicting. He would no longer be God.
Okay.
So that's basically what it is that the reason Jesus had to come and die was because there was sin. And in order to get rid of that sin, that debt had to be paid. Death had to occur. And the only way we could be saved is if, because normally human beings on their own, once they die, that's it. Like they die, like nobody can bring themselves back to life, right? But the only way we could be saved is if we could sort of pay the debt, die, and then pass through death, and then come back to life after having died. That way, it's paid, that we, like, the death has been paid for, like it's accounted for, but now we're no longer dead, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's what the Bible says when it says death has been conquered. Like Jesus conquered the grave. It's that if it could be done, that he could just snap his fingers and like people wouldn't need to die anymore, then yeah, he would have done it. But then that would contradict the very definition of him being God and him being consistent and all consistent, and there being no inconsistencies in him. And because he knew that, it was one of two things: either he just left us to die and like just closed the chapter, or he went the long route, which is what he did. He sent someone in the complete human embodiment, who was exactly like us, able to be tested, able to sweat, able to like feel temptation, pain, fear, all those things, but had the identity of God. So like, he wasn't born of man, he was born of Mary, but the seed, because the Bible says the sin of man is in the seed, and it came from Adam, because his nature changed. So the nature of everyone born after that was naturally sinful, like it was naturally imperfect. Because if you say sinful, people think, oh, you're talking about actions, but like sinful, the definition of sinful just means imperfect. It's naturally imperfect. And so in order to have someone die who was, in order to basically short circuit that system and like just like make a mess of it, he had to send his own seed in human form, who there was no sin on his record, but because he was born in imperfect flesh, he felt those temptations, he felt those weaknesses, but had to like go throughout his entire life like suffering through them and never actually once falling and being submitted and becoming submissive to that falling nature. And then he had to then also die and then be raised back to life. And the reason why he could be raised back to life was because he never sinned. It says the soul that sins shall die. But he never sinned. Instead, he took the sins of everyone else and was raised back to life. So he had, it was a very long-term operation, basically. It's like if you have someone in like a burning house and like you literally have to send like SWAT team, everybody to like and like any small thing and the house will crumble to pieces. That was from Old Testament up until the crucifixion of Jesus and his resurrection. It was like a long-term like operation to save people. Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's basically that was it. That was why he had to die the way he did, and he couldn't have done it in any other way. I think the Bible actually says it. Jesus said it himself, right? Like right before he was crucified. He said, Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass over me. And then shortly after it was like, but not my will, but your will be done. Which actually points out what you said, Tolu, that they had separate wills. Not separate in the sense that they didn't agree with each other, but that they had independent wills. Like they all had free will, but that they were in agreement because they chose to be in agreement. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does everyone else get that? Because I'm not hearing anything from you guys anymore. Like you just or...
Yeah, we did. I did.
Okay. Bami? Faye?
I got that.
Okay, cool. Alright, yeah, so we've actually successfully gone through all the topics, all the questions, and I feel like we've done quite well actually. I'm quite impressed. Well done, guys. Like I'm impressed. I'm like proud of you guys. And you guys had some insanely like deep contributions. Like I was like, man, that's next level. Some of the things you guys were saying, I was like, deep. So yeah, today has been like a good discussion meeting day thingy. All right, who wants to sort of round us up? Anyone want to round us up? Close us? Or should I pick at random? Should I just do it myself?
Yeah, you could do it.
Wow. So I asked like 4 questions, and that's the only one you responded to. What were you saying, Faye?
I was like, you should do
it. Alright, I'll go for it. Alright, in Jesus' name, Lord, thank you for giving us this opportunity to come together to study your word, to as a family to dig deep into like understanding you and growing more in knowledge and understanding of you and in fellowship. Lord, we thank you because we know we're not perfect and salvation was not by our doing, and that if we had tried forever, we would have never been able to achieve it. But you sent your son to take our place and die for us. We give you the honor and glory because you alone deserve that adoration. We thank you for everything you've done for us up until this point, what you will continue to do for us in each and every one of our lives, individually and as a team, as family of Christians, both here and in general all over the world. Thank you, Father, for all you've done for us, Lord. For in Jesus' name I prayed. Amen. All right.
Amen.
Alright, guys, it's been awesome. I mean, we sort of overshot the time, but I feel like the topic we were discussing was pretty deep. So, like, fair enough. I'll try planning a bit earlier next week, so like we can sort of have exactly what we're gonna say and like time it so it's like bam bam bam, so we don't like so we don't have to like sort of, I mean, the freedom to like sort of explore is good as well, but at the same time I feel like it might be helpful for people, for viewers, if it was a bit more short and concise, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I'm about to go offline, so I'm gonna I'm gonna say goodbye to the viewers. Like, it's been great. Thank you for joining us this week on Salvation, Nicaitas. Meet us here next week. Hopefully same time. Probably won't be, but hopefully I will become more disciplined and it will be the same time. Actually, no, it should not be the same time because it's pretty late. But it should be earlier. But yeah, peace out.